Welcome back to Coast Vue. I really enjoyed my visit with Paige Roberts. You can see why I spend so much time checking in with leaders in the chamber community on a regular basis because they really have their finger on the pulse. And as I've said so many times before, they're not your father's chamber anymore. They are involved in community building and grant writing and economic development. Certainly, they're involved in things that involve the traditional chamber role, looking out for small business especially, but business in general. And but they are doing so much more these days, and they are so critical to what our communities are all about these days. I can't tell you how important they are. So without any further ado, let's shift gears, and we're going to move over to another one of my chamber friends, and Pitre is actually the marketing and communications manager for the Hancock County Chamber. Her boss and my dear friend Tish Williams is on the show on a pretty regular basis, and Ann's been on. I think this is actually her third appearance on Coast Vue. But without any further ado, let me say good morning to you, Ann. How are you?
I am great. Good to be back, Ricky. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. It's interesting. I just visited with Paige Roberts, and the conversation, you just never know where the conversation is going to go when I visit with you guys, because as you heard what I said, there's such a wide range of stuff that you guys are involved in these days. It's just not the traditional chamber work. And I know that your work with Tish, there is no rest for the weary, is there?
There is no rest for the weary in this world. And, whenever someone talks to me about chamber life, people who are new to the chamber world, I always say, if you have a bad day, don't worry. The next day is going to be completely different, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one.
Well, we've Tish and I have talked about this. I usually ask where people are, but you're in your new offices at this point, right?
We are nicely settled in new offices at 300 South 2nd Street. We are now in the process of developing plans for the first floor of our building, which we're going to be making into a business resource center. So community groups can use it as a meeting space. Freelancers, remote workers can come in and use it as an office space if they need a quiet place away from their home, especially with it being spring break with your kids are there. And it's a multi-purpose space, so we're really excited about the potential there. And we're also billing the building as kind of a link between Old Town Base St. Louis on Main Street and the newly renovated Depot District up on Blaze Avenue.
Yeah, it's in a really strategic location, and I know you guys are super excited about your new location. I love the idea of the Business Resource Center, incidentally, and this sort of common meeting space. I had heard and read about it as we were in the process of developing sort of the vision and sort of a plan for the new Knight Nonprofit Center. I had the opportunity to be the chairman of the Knight Foundation, the local Knight Foundation Advisory Committee during that time in the aftermath of Katrina. And I got to work closely with Adele because Adele, as you know, was the advisory person for the Knight Foundation in this community. As we were developing this vision, along the way, Alberto Ibarguen introduced me to one of the leaders at the Robert Woods Johnson Foundation, the Johnson & Johnson, famous Johnson & Johnson brand, where the family had established this incredibly successful foundation in Princeton, New Jersey. And they invited me up to spend a day with their team. And I didn't really know what to expect, to be honest with you. But when they said spend a day with your team, I went to this incredible place. On one side of this building was nothing but the foundation, all these experts in all these different areas. And I spent time with each one of them. On the other side, though, was this community space. I mean, this really dramatic community space. I mean, where, community meetings could take place and resource centers and all of that. And that's when it occurred to me that our vision for the Knight Nonprofit Center needed to feel like this. It needed to have this kind of, great meeting spot, this great place where all these nonprofit minds come together. And it was incredible to see that. And now, of course, we have the Knight Nonprofit Center that's actually realizing all those goals. But having this opportunity within the Hancock County Chamber to be a resource center, to have people come to you guys in this really incredibly strategically located building that you're now housed at. It's a way for you to sort of be connected to everything, isn't it?
It really is. And it's a wonderful partnership because the building is actually owned by the city of Bay St. Louis. So we're really defining public-private partnerships moving forward, which is equally exciting as just being located here and being able to be the bridge between the two parts of town.
Yeah, I know, of course, you're in the Hancock building, and Hancock Whitney is expanding, and unfortunately, you had to move. And I remember the initial reaction was, I can't believe we got to do this. But then, things always kind of turn out well in situations like that, where there might be a challenge. It suddenly becomes an opportunity. And now all that move and everything's behind you. You're in this great new spot. You had this, community space that you were just explaining, and you're bridging the gap between sort of old town and new town, really, in a lot of respects. But it's pretty cool, isn't it?
It's wonderful. It's never fun to have to move. And we're certainly grateful for the time that we did have on the second floor of the Hancock Whitney building. It was perfect for our needs at the time. But I think that as our economy is changing and things are evolving, definitely landed right where we're supposed to be.
As a marketing and communications person, you have to be thrilled that you have an opportunity in your role to sing the praises of your community in so many different ways. But when you, but what's interesting? Like I had the opportunity to reflect on Ocean Springs being named, the best small town to shop in America by USA Today. And I always talk about if there are bookends in the sort of tourism world and the visiting world, it's Bay St. Louis and Ocean Springs. I mean, I just love the way you guys send, visitors back and forth, so to speak. But about the same time, we're celebrating Ocean Springs as this great small town to shop in by USA Today. Southern Living magazine's got this, got you guys identified as the best small towns in the South in 2023. You're not surprised by that, but when you look at the list of other small towns that you were part of and that were identified, it really puts Bay St. Louis on the map, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, we're on a list with our neighbors in Ocean Springs, of course, and we're thrilled about that. But also places that I never dreamed of, like Savannah, Asheville, Birmingham, all these really cool places. So just to be among that mix is unbelievable. So much more than I imagined. But we belong there too. Own it, right?
Well, even in that article, Ocean Springs is mentioned as well. But the reality is that you have a place that not only is on the national map for sure, but when people come there, I always had to come back to my friend Josh Morgan, which you and I have talked about before, but he's the most prolific hurricane chaser in the world. I mean, he travels all over the world chasing hurricanes, and he's chosen Bay St. Louis as the place he's building a house. He's already broke ground, and he fell in love with that place. He could live anywhere. He's from New York. He lives in L.A. He's got a place in L.A. He's going to continue to live in L.A., but during the hurricane season, he's going to be in Bay St. Louis. He loves Bay St. Louis. He fell in love with the Bay St. Louis. You think of people in New Orleans that always tended to sort of gravitate toward Bay St. Louis, had a lot of family history of having maybe a second home there and whatever, but during the pandemic and other challenges for New Orleans, this growing number of people, a lot of celebrities, I might add, coming to Bay St. Louis to call it their home. And when my wife Ann and I come over there, it feels right. It feels cool. And it's just great to get that kind of recognition. That's for sure, isn't it?
Absolutely. I had the same experience coming to Hancock County, just from down the road in Gulfport. You come here, it feels comfortable. You feel welcome. It's like a breath of fresh air. So it's amazing that Josh has chosen Bay St. Louis as his new hometown. That's a true testament to the quality of the community here. like you said, he can go anywhere, but he chose us.
And then Southern Living, South's best beach towns for girlfriend getaways.
Oh, yes.
Isn't that cool?
That is amazing. And, I'm really partial to that one. I'm excited about it because we have so many small business owners who are women. I think that women starting businesses, they grow them, they nurture them, they have a strategic plan for their businesses. Of course, that's going to speak to other women who are visiting the area. So very cool, and a real triumph for the women who have started businesses here.
It says the easygoing spot can claim some of the Big Easy's winning attributes, like ironwork and colorful buildings and charming old town Bay St. Louis, and it just goes on from there. But it's a beautiful testament to the city. Hey, when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Ann Pitre. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to Coast Vue. One of the things that I remember so well after the Governor's Commission work, that when we had the charrettes, had 100 architects and planners, including the Prince of Wales Foundation, come together and envision what these communities could be. And it was hard. This was maybe 5 weeks after Hurricane Katrina. It's hard for people to get their head around thinking about possibilities. But that was actually a really important conversation, because what it did is it unleashed a big time conversation around infrastructure. What were the infrastructure needs going to be? And so the governor was really pressing hard to say, he didn't just want to go ask for a bunch of money. He wanted to tie every dime that he asked for back to a plan. And so the infrastructure of coastal Mississippi, the bridges, having the debates, incidentally, about the bridges and whether we should do walking paths on the bridges. A lot of people wanted to stop that effort. And I was at the epicenter of that debate, I might add. And Haley Barbour talks about it in his book, America's Great Storm, about that particular problem, or that challenge we had. Well, aren't we glad we did that, though? Aren't we glad? Because you look at the bridges now, and they're top attractions for our communities. People love walking those bridges. But I'm with Ann Pitre from the chamber. One of the ideas that emanated from that was the thought of doing a harbor for Bay St. Louis, and a marina. And a lot of people said, why would you make ground zero for Hurricane Katrina and future storms? Why would you try to do a harbor or a marina? And everybody's wondering. Every coastal community's got a marina. If there's ever an opportunity, it's now to re-envision how that might work. It took time to come around, but I'm looking at this aerial photo that Southern Living magazine published of this beautiful marina filled with boats, with the shoreline of Bay St. Louis and that wonderful community in the background. It's really kind of revolutionized the city. The opportunity to now go and take that walk, or to have a drink or a meal looking out over that marina. It just added an incredible dimension to that community, didn't it?
Absolutely, it did. And the interesting thing about the Bay St. Louis Municipal Harbor is that it's mostly full and continues to expand. The Pier 5 was relatively recently opened. I want to say we cut the ribbon on that a year or two ago. Our Secretary of State, Michael Watson, came down along with all of our other state leaders to celebrate with us. And we are actually cutting the ribbon on another component of the harbor area on Friday. They've just finished a new ADA pedestrian ramp so that everyone, even those with mobility issues, can walk down and enjoy going around the harbor and the beautiful sights there. There are some magnificent boats and birds and life and all the things that you would want to see in a charming coastal town.
One of the things that you guys are heavily involved in is Partners for Stennis, and this relationship between Michoud over in Louisiana and NASA at Stennis Space Center, and the Artemis, and how critical that's going to be to the future of spaceflight for America. This focus that you're able to put, first of all, you're bringing these collaborative leaders together that all have a stake in the game. But we will continue to work hard on this show to put more voices in this conversation, because I think Stennis tends to be a little bit out of sight, out of mind for a lot of people in coastal Mississippi. It's one of the bookends that I talk about all the time here on this show. And as Jerry St. Pé so well put it, and I shared a segment about him saying this at the One Coast Awards last year, and that is that we can't get complacent. We can't think that the blue chip industries that are part of Stennis are always going to be there. We just can't take that for granted. The reality is that Stennis funding is so critical to what we're doing. And you recently had a meeting with Representative Mike Ezell, and we can't say that enough, can we, Ann, how important that is?
No, absolutely not. No, Mike Ezell came over yesterday and spoke at a gathering of about 150 business leaders, and he spoke about a lot of things, but one of the things that he really emphasized was his commitment to funding for Stennis. And Tish actually just recently came back. We worked with our partner organization over in Houston, the Citizens for Space Exploration. They do a fly-in to DC every year. This year, they're actually doing two. They're doing one where they are just devoting to meeting with freshman members of Congress to explain the importance about space exploration and space flight and continued funding for that, and also meeting with more tenured members of the of Congress to ensure that those efforts are continued. So Tish actually just came back from that effort in the last couple of days. And it's more important now forever. You know, Artemis 2, 3, and 4 are already in production in various states over in Michoud. So we're going to be sending people to the moon again here shortly.
Hey, well, actually, the last time that Tish and I visited here on Coast Vue, she talked about the plan to join the Houston group and do the fly-in. So I'm assuming it went really well. I thought that was so smart to get the freshman legislators to begin to help orient them around why this is so important. But I appreciate you bringing that up. Hey, listen, we're kind of out of time for today, but Ann, it's always a pleasure to meet with you. We probably ought to get together more often.
Thanks for having me back.
It has been a pleasure. We enjoyed today. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.